Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are concluding our, intense look at Richard Wagner. We're moving past those early years, the Dresden time, the first operas.
Yeah, now we're really getting into the thick of it. The high-stakes world, revolution, the scandals, and the works that, frankly, changed music forever.
We're charting his path through, let's say, his greatest artistic maturity.
Absolutely. This is when he really solidifies his impact on harmony, but also simultaneously entrenches himself as this incredibly contentious figure. We're diving into that duality, the man trying to create the Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art.
And our mission for you listening is to grasp how this personal chaos, this radical philosophy, really drove works like Tristan and Isolde. How did they become precursors to modern music?
And just as importantly, why his name is still so central when we talk about artistic genius, but also, that disturbing cultural shadow he cast.
Okay, so we pick up the story with Wagner in exile in Switzerland. This is roughly 1849 to 1858. Let's unpack this monumental shift. How did philosophy and, personal scandal combine to drive Tristan?
Well, the big catalyst, philosophically speaking, was in 1854. He reads Arthur Schopenhauer, specifically The World as Will and Representation.
And he called that the most important event of his life, didn't he?
He did, which is huge because before this, Wagner's whole theory, laid out in his essay Opera and Drama, was that music served the drama. It was a vehicle for the text.
That was his guiding principle.
Exactly. But Schopenhauer flips that completely. He argues music is supreme, it doesn't serve anything, it's a direct expression of the world's blind and impulsive will, this dark primal force driving everything.
Wow, okay, so not just a minor adjustment, a total reversal.
A complete 180, and it changed how he thought about music's power.
So if music expresses this blind will, that sounds less structured, more like pure, raw emotion. How does that actually sound in Tristan?
It sounds like longing.
Yeah.
Like tension that never quite resolves. And crucially, this philosophical shift happened right alongside some intense personal stuff.
The affair with Mathilde Wiesendank.
Exactly. The wife of his patron, Otto Wiesendank. This consuming forbidden desire became the, let's say, emotional fuel for applying Schopenhauer's ideas.
And this whole situation was so intense, he actually stopped working on the Ring cycle.
He did. In 1857, he puts the Ring aside, this massive project he'd already invested years in, specifically to write Tristan.
He just had to get it out.
It seems so. Tristan is the immediate result of this philosophical and emotional pressure cooker. And it's a landmark because it pushes the tonal system, the standard harmony of the time, right to its breaking point. We call it extreme chromaticism.
Okay, for listeners maybe not deep into music theory, what is extreme chromaticism? And why is that opening Tristan chord so famous?
Well, think of traditional harmony like gravity. Everything wants to pull back to a home key, a point of rest. It feels resolved, satisfying. Chromaticism uses notes outside that home key. It creates tension, delays that feeling of rest. In Tristan, especially with that first chord, the dissonance, the clash is intense, and Wagner just stretches it out. He delays the resolution, sometimes for ages.
So the music itself sounds like yearning, like it can never quite arrive.
Precisely. It embodies that Schopenhauerian idea of this relentless, unsatisfied will. And, the intensity wasn't just musical. The affair itself collapsed pretty dramatically in 1858.
When his first wife, Minna, intercepted a letter.
Yeah. So the personal chaos, the collapse of the relationship, it really mirrored and maybe even pushed the musical language to its absolute limit.
But the revolution wasn't just in the music, was it? Wagner always felt the need to explain himself, often in prose that was, explosive.
He was definitely a lightning rod his whole life. And yes, his writings are inseparable from the controversy. We have to address this directly.
The main one being Judaism in music. First published anonymously in 1850, but then really significantly republished under his own name in 1869.
Yes. And look, we have to be impartial here, but the essay uses extremely abusive language. Wagner argues that Jewish people are fundamentally outsiders, disconnected from the German national spirit, the Volksgeist.
He claimed they could only produce shallow, sort of artificial imitations of true European art.
That's the core of his argument. And he wasn't vague, he named names. He specifically attacked composers like Meyerbeer, who were very successful, accusing them of basically commercializing music, chasing success instead of creating genuine art.
So republishing it in 69 under his own name, that was deliberate provocation.
Oh, absolutely. He knew exactly what he was doing. And predictably, it led to protests, actual public protests, some early performances of Die Meistersinger. That shadow, that controversy never really left him after that.
And amidst all this public turmoil, his private life takes another dramatic turn. His first wife, Minna, dies in 1866. And then in 1870, he marries Cosima von Bülow.
Right, but that marriage only came after years of, well, more scandal.
The affair with Cosima, who was Franz Liszt's illegitimate daughter, and married at the time.
Married to Hans von Bülow, who was one of Wagner's most important conductors. It was a huge scandal in Munich. They had 3 children together, Isolde, Eva, and Siegfried, while she was still technically married to Bülow.
It's kind of staggering, isn't it, that someone causing so much disruption could find this sort of domestic peace eventually.
It is remarkable, and maybe as a sign of that contentment, he composed the Siegfried Idyll, a very different piece for him, intimate, lyrical.
He premiered it as a surprise for Cosima's birthday, Christmas Day, 1870.
Yeah, with a small ensemble playing on the stairs of their villa. A really beautiful personal moment, quite unlike the massive public works he's known for.
But that grandiosity definitely returned. He still had the Ring cycle to finish and premiere, this colossal 4-opera epic, his Gesamtkunstwerk. Where could you possibly stage something like that?
You couldn't, not in an existing theater. He needed something built specifically for it, and that leads us to Bayreuth.
Which only happened because of King Ludwig II of Bavaria.
The Mad King Ludwig, yes. He was completely obsessed with Wagner and his music. Ludwig paid off Wagner's massive debts and provided the funding to build the Bayreuth Festspielhaus, the festival theater.
On the famous Green Hill. And the theater itself was radical for its time.
Totally radical. Completed in 1875, it had key innovations designed to immerse the audience completely in the artwork. First, darkening the auditorium during the performance. That was new.
Right. Usually the lights stayed on, people could see each other.
Exactly. And second, the famous orchestral pit. It was sunken, completely hidden from the audience's view.
Why do that? Why hide the musicians?
Because Wagner wanted the music to feel like it was emerging from the drama itself, almost supernaturally, not coming from a visible group of people in formal wear. It was all about unifying the experience, achieving that Gesamtkunstwerk.
And the culmination was of the first Bayreuth Festival in 1876. The premiere of the entire Ring cycle, performed as intended over several days.
A monumental event, and the reactions completely polarized, as you'd expect with Wagner.
Who liked it? Who hated it?
Well, you had composers like Edvard Grieg calling it divinely composed, but then you had, say, the French newspaper Le Figaro calling the music the dream of a lunatic. It forced everyone to take a stance.
And this event caused a major break with one of his biggest champions, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yes, Nietzsche. He'd written this incredibly admiring essay, Richard Wagner in Bayreuth, but he attended the festival and was just bitterly disappointed.
Why? What did he see?
He saw it as Wagner selling out, pandering to German nationalism, becoming exclusive and almost, well, vulgar in its spectacle, instead of pursuing the profound universal art Nietzsche thought Wagner was capable of. This is a devastating split for both of them.
And it cemented this idea that Wagner's genius and his problematic aspects were just completely intertwined.
He couldn't separate them. Moving into his final years then, his last big work is Parsifal, finished in 1882, and he didn't even call it an opera.
Right, a Bühnenweihfestspiel. What does that mean again?
A festival play for the consecration of the stage. Very specific, very ritualistic. It took him 4 years to compose.
And it combines the Holy Grail legend with Buddhist ideas.
Elements of Buddhist renunciation, yeah. Which comes back again to his reading of Schopenhauer years earlier. Musically, Parsifal is often seen as this incredibly refined, almost ethereal score. Some call it unearthly.
But inevitably controversy again, even with this quasi-religious work.
Oh, yes. It's still debated. Its treatment of Christian themes, the alleged eroticism simmering beneath the surface, and, again, expressions of German nationalism and antisemitism are all points of contention, even though Wagner himself called it his most Christian work.
He was quite ill by this point, wasn't he? Suffering from angina.
Severely ill, yes. There's a famous story from the final performance of Parsifal in Bayreuth, August 1882. During the third act, Wagner apparently slipped into the orchestra pit unseen.
Really?
Took the baton from the conductor, Hermann Levi, and conducted the performance through to the very end. A final, very Wagnerian gesture.
Wow. And he died not long after that.
Just a few months later, in Venice, February 13th, 1883, a heart attack. He was 69. His body was brought back to Bayreuth, buried in the garden of his home, Wanfried.
So his life ends, but the legacy, that's maybe even more complex and, well, explosive.
Absolutely. The influence on the 20th century is just immense.
In music, obviously.
Those harmonic innovations, the extreme chromaticism we talked about with Tristan.
It basically blew the doors off traditional tonality. It paved the way directly towards atonality. Composers like Mahler, who was a famous Wagner conductor, Debussy, Schoenberg, they all had to reckon with Wagner. His sound, his orchestration, it changed everything.
And the leitmotif technique.
Hugely influential, maybe especially outside of classical music. That idea of using a short musical tag to represent a character, an object, an idea.
We hear it in film scores all the time.
All the time. It's standard practice. Think Star Wars, John Williams basically built a career on Wagnerian leitmotifs. Or even think of Coppola using Ride of the Valkyries in Apocalypse Now. That's pure Wagnerian association.
And beyond music, literature, philosophy. Massive impact there, too. Writers like Baudelaire and Mallarmé in France practically worshipped him. Thomas Mann, James Joyce. You can find Wagner woven into their work. T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland is filled with Wagnerian echoes.
Okay, but then we have to confront the darkest part of the legacy, the Nazi appropriation.
Yes, we must. Adolf Hitler was a huge admirer. He saw Wagner's operas, particularly the myths and legends, as embodying his own twisted vision of the German nation. He was a frequent visitor to Bayreuth.
It's important to be precise here, though, isn't it? The Nazis used parts of Wagner for propaganda, but maybe ignored other parts.
That's a crucial distinction. They definitely cherry-picked. They used the heroic myths, the sense of German destiny they found in the ring. But some Nazi ideologues actually rejected Parsifal, finding it too Christian, maybe too pacifist even.
But the association stuck.
It absolutely stuck. And it was reinforced by Wagner's own family, who ran the Bayreuth Festival and were close to Hitler. Because of these deep, troubling associations, performing Wagner's music in Israel, for example, remains incredibly controversial even today. The shadow is long.
So wrapping this all up, what does it all mean? Wagner demanded revolution everywhere: music, theater, society. He achieved this incredible fusion of arts, the Gesamtkunstwerk.
But he simultaneously cast this incredibly dark shadow with his writings, his politics, his personal life. It's impossible to untangle.
The great paradox seems to be the composer who perfected the leitmotif, a tool for unity, left behind this fractured legacy. Brilliant music, deep philosophy, but also this undeniable political darkness.
Yeah. And his work still forces you, the listener, to grapple with that duality. You can't really engage with Wagner without confronting all of it.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Wagner seemed obsessed with the idea of redemption in his later works, especially Parsifal. Yet his own legacy, his influence, often twisted far from his artistic intentions, amplified by history, needed decades of intense critical work before people could even begin to separate the art from the man, if that's even fully possible. He aimed for the total work of art, but maybe what he actually left us is a total moral challenge.